Right, I think we're ready to go. Can I just check that I can be heard? Can anyone confirm? Murti or Raj, can you confirm I can be heard?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Raj. Good. Right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to all our customers and stakeholders joining Nemo Link for our Brexit webinar. Although it's our first Brexit event, it's also our first virtual event. So we hope you enjoy our session over the next 90 minutes or so. Now, I've met many of you before, but if you don't know me, my name is Nick Pittarello, and I'm the Customer and Regulation Manager for Nemo Link, and I'm going to be hosting the event today. So I guess it's probably best if we start off with some quick pointers on how we're going to be managing this session today. Munti, if I can have next couple of slides, please. And the next one. Perfect, thank you. So first of all, could I just mention to you that this is actually being recorded, so you will have an opportunity to review everything that we say again when we post this recording on our website. If I could ask you to turn off your cameras, that would help, and please also ensure you are muted. We will be using the Slido app. So if you haven't already done so, please could you download it onto your mobile phone, as we will be using it for polling and for questions and for managing the interactivity on this webinar. The number to enter into Slido when requested is 41536, and you can join already at this point if you like to. So please post any questions that you have on Slido. And you can also vote for questions that you like. And I'd very much encourage you to ask as many questions as you like, either anonymously or with your name, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can also raise your hand in Microsoft Teams directly, and we'll try and find a suitable opportunity for you to raise your question directly. Now, in case we get any IT problems, if we lose visual, then please use the slides that have been circulated beforehand, and we'll mention the page number, the slide number that we're on, and then we'll just use it as a teleconference if we lose sound as well. So we've got a fallback procedure there in case we get any problems. Okay, Munti, thank you. So just briefly then, by way of background, I know that there are some people on this call that perhaps are less familiar with our work. So just by way of background, Nemo Link is a 1,000 megawatt HVDC interconnector between Belgium and the UK. We began commercial operations in January 2019. And we're approaching our second year anniversary of operations. It's a 130-kilometer cable, stretches from Richborough through to Herdersburg in Belgium, and we're a 50-50 joint venture between Elia and National Grid, and the project cost about 600 million euros to build. But behind the physical assets, we have a hard-working team of people. Thank you, Munti. So you can see here the faces of the people involved in our IT, commercial, finance functions, and also, of course, we have a number of individuals working hard on site to keep our assets going. So that's enough about Nemo Link for now. Let's find out a little bit more about some of the people on this call. So for this, we're going to use Slido and try it out for the first time. So if you could pick up your mobile phones or turn to the slido.com website, please type in the number 41536 into Slido, and please let us know which country you're in right now. So I guess we're expecting people to be mainly from Northwest Europe. It feels a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, actually, but this isn't one that Ireland is going to win. Well, there's a bit of a ramping up there. Okay, so it looks like most people are from the United Kingdom, followed by Belgium, which I guess is not altogether unsurprising. And then we have a high contingent from Denmark, the Netherlands, and a few people from Germany, Czech Republic, and Ireland. And how many are there in the other category, Mutsi? Can we see that? Okay, so no one from France. That's interesting, and no one from Switzerland. Okay, that's interesting. Very good. Okay, thank you. So I think we have another Slido question for you, and this time what I'd like you to do, if you would, is simply write in the name of the organization that you represent. What will happen here? What will happen here is the more people from the same organization, the words will get bigger. So if there are a lot of people from one organization, then that word will be higher. Ah, there we see NG in the lead there. Okay, let's give this a couple of minutes to take shape. Okay, so we have quite a few people from Unicorn, NG, Centrica, but I think, as you can see as well, we have representation from regulators and media. So there is a wide range of both customers and stakeholders. Okay, very good. So we know Slido is working, and as I said, you can also use Slido to post questions, and we'll be monitoring Slido as we go through this this event, so that we can capture those questions. Okay, brilliant. So moving on to the main body then of our webinar. In terms of structure, we're going to have Martin Croucher, a mono-deputy, just to give us some updates on the markets and how things have been working operationally over the last year or so. I'll be back then to take you through some of the main impacts on Brexit and our trading regime. And Munti Nguyen from Customer Relations will also take you then through the detail of the cutover from IEM to non-IEM and some of the process changes that we expect and the impacts on the firmness regime. We then welcome Mona back to tell us about what we're going to do and how we're thinking things might change beyond Brexit. Now that some of the jigsaw pieces have fallen into place, we can think about how we can better improve our processes, and Mona will tell you a bit more about that. We have a live consultation at the moment, and we'll be very interested in feedback from market participants. And then I'll be back to give you a brief heads up on what's coming next, and then we'll have hopefully enough time for a Q&A session. So can I invite then Martin Croucher, Operations Director, to tell us a little bit about what's been happening over the last year in terms of our assets. Martin, over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Just check you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Martin.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. So yeah, Nick's asked me just to give a brief overview of operations in the last year or so. It's basically the headlines are from our point of view that our year-to-date availability is 99%. So really impressive availability from a relatively new asset. I think this year we've not had very many issues at all, and I'll talk a little bit about the ones that we have had and a bit about the outage that we had in September. But basically, we're really pleased with our continued operational performance. We're just about to hit 250 days of continuous operation, which this early on in our asset life, we're really pleased with. I guess, like everybody, we've had to deal with and manage the effects of COVID-19, and we've continued to operate with 365, 24/7 presence at site. We have limited access to site to key personnel only, and we have put in place additional sort of control measures to make sure that we limit interaction of people on site. But again, we've managed to do that through the hard work of our teams, both in Richborough in the UK and in Herdesbroek in Belgium. We regularly review the advice we get from the national authorities, in particular guidance and advice from the health authorities, to make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines that we need to keep people safe. September saw our second annual outage. So we come out of service for a few days once a year, and as a result of the fact that we can only get access to certain parts of our equipment in that time, we have a fairly intense period of work, mainly on site in Richborough and Herdesbroek. The picture you can see on the screen there is the valve hall, and there's quite a lot of work that we have to do to check things and make updates and changes in both valve halls during that outage. We also do checks on cable systems and a lot of work on our ancillary systems as well. So we actually managed to come back into service from the outage slightly earlier, as a result of both excellent teamwork on site and great support from our operational suppliers. I guess in terms of sort of operational issues, we've not had very many this year. So the ones that we've been challenged by early on in the year, basically we had one at Richborough and one in Herdesbroek. One was a problem with a pump, which we were able to return to service quite quickly, and the other one was a protection and control problem, both of which were issues that we came back into service in a couple of hours. And as I mentioned earlier, we're approaching 250 days. If you take out the planned outage in September, 250 days continuous operation. Really pleased with that performance. I guess just sort of looking ahead in terms of next year, we have a planned outage again scheduled in September next year. We have no plans to come out of service before then. And I guess the only other thing I just mention is that as we sort of go into winter, we do put in place additional checks and monitoring of equipment during the winter months to make sure we don't miss anything. We also test our processes and procedures on a regular basis to make sure that we're ready to respond if there are any problems. So I guess, in summary, really good performance this year. Really pleased with the way the assets performed, and anticipate continued good performance as we go into 21. So with that, I'll hand you back to Nick.
Thanks, Martin. Very interesting. Thanks for that update. Mona, do you want to tell us a little bit about the markets and what's been happening over the last year?
Yeah, sure, gladly. So what you see here is a bit of a picture of 2020 so far, where you see kind of on the top of the chart the power prices in GB and Belgium, and then sort of down the bottom the generation mixes, both in Belgium, and then a bit of a detail on French nuclear generation. So I think overall, what we can probably say over about 2020 in terms of spreads and power prices is that we've seen lots of volatility. We started the kind of start of the year in the winter with a kind of relatively warm temperatures, record wind output, and low gas prices, and all of that really sort of pushed prices quite low for winter time. But obviously, the story was a bit dominated by the COVID crisis, where from March, and you kind of see that quite clearly, especially the Belgian prices were affected quite a lot in the negative direction. So we had lots of nuclear output, which is sort of the red in those charts. But then as well, solid wind output and very high solar output for that time of the year as well. And so we experienced these kind of negative prices kind of a lot, specifically in Belgium. And clearly, in terms of the spreads, that sort of contributed a lot to quite solid spreads at that point. If we sort of moved a little bit more kind of, throughout the summer and then towards fall, you see the nuclear availability, drops off, a couple of outages on Belgian plants, and then obviously the issues that most of you will be aware of in the French market and the nuclear output there. And so you see power prices creep up again, both in Belgium and GB, but as well fairly narrow spreads at that point. And I think we're now sort of more in a situation where we see quite a lot of outages as well in GB, specifically gas assets, and that low nuclear availability plus returning demand is that we've seen some quite interesting prices on the upside, 200 euros in both markets. So and that's sort of where we more or less are now in October, and if we look year to date, it's a spread of about 7 euros per megawatt hour. Perhaps like looking ahead a little bit for next year, and if we look at the next slides, we have some forward prices. So those point now towards about 10 to 11 euros per megawatt hour if you look at the forward prices. So clearly a bit of an uptick in terms of what we've seen so far in 2020. So that seems to be, those type of spreads seem to be supported by relatively high nuclear availability, especially in Belgium, where the picture for 2021 looks a bit better than what we've had this year. A little bit of a recovery in gas prices, quite moderate, but still has an impact on the spreads. And then again, so that lower availability of gas assets and some other outages in the GB market seem to give a little bit of a push to those spreads. But overall, next year, I guess if you look at the market, market would expect flows to be predominantly from Belgium to GB, both in kind of the base and the peaks, also peak and off peaks. So that's a really quick update on the market side of things. Nick, I'll hand it back to you.
Mona, thank you. Perfect. Can I ask, Munti, are there any questions out there at the moment? Has anyone raised their hands on MST? Was there any questions anyone would like to ask so far?
No, I don't think there is any hand raised on the Teams yet. Let me have a look on Slido. No, we haven't got any questions on Slido either. So yeah, you get to carry on, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Munti. So just to emphasize, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask as we go, and we'll try and address them. Very good. So here we are again. Brexit. I think we're probably all sick of this subject by now, but there have been a few interesting developments very recently, and Munti, perhaps we can move to the next slide. So this section here is just to sort of give you the high level impacts on the commercial trading environment that is to come. So, as you'll be aware, on the 31st of January 2020, the UK ceased to be a member of the EU, and therefore will be leaving on January the 1st, 2021. And as we're all aware, the EU and UK are busy negotiating a free trade agreement as we speak. And I have no idea whether the US election will have any bearing on that, but we'll see whether things get better. We know that it hasn't been a great process so far, and we don't really know whether actually they'll end up managing to negotiate a free trade agreement, but we'll see what happens. But what we do know is that regardless of whether an FTA is negotiated or not, we do know that the European Commission has made it very clear that regardless of the outcome of the negotiations, the UK will no longer be part of the internal energy market when the transition period comes to an end. And that was a very clear statement that was made by the EC on the 9th of July. And indeed, since then, we've seen communication from the Single Day Ahead Coupling Committee, SDAC, who have communicated the exit plans for GB exiting the implicit coupling process. And you can see the link there to the communication that was issued, I think it was last week. And indeed, we've seen Nord Pool and EPEX adjust the energy auction timings to make them before the main European coupling process. So they've made some announcements as well, fully anticipating the GB exit from the internal energy market. So that very much is our fundamental assumption. It's different to the previous Brexit cutovers we've had, where we weren't sure whether, we've had two of these events before. We are pretty much now sure that we are leaving the IM. And that's probably with about 95% certainty. We can't say never, but I think the chances of any kind of remaining are politically vanishingly small. So I think that it is a fair assumption to assume we are leaving. Thank you, Minty. So with that assumption in mind, what are the impacts? So in terms of customs, we know that whether there is going to be a free trade agreement or not, we're not expecting any customs to be in place between the UK and the EU. And we had a conversation with the British government as early as last week, and they've confirmed that again, that is not on the cards. In the UK, Nemo Link will be making import and export declarations to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So we'll be doing that on behalf of market participants in the UK. In Belgium, we expect that UK registered traders will have to be represented by an EU customs agent to declare any trade. So that's the position on customs. Any questions on that, Monty? No.
No.
Okay, thank you. Very good. So moving on to VAT. All of our auctions are carried out by JAO for explicit auctions, and the invoicing is carried out by JAO in Luxembourg. So unless you're a Luxembourg-based trader, interconnected transactions are exempt from VAT. And again, we had a session with HMRC on the 3rd of November last week. VAT is zero, unlikely to be any fiscal impact, no fiscal risk, even if things go slightly wrong. And we can't guarantee it will stay like that for all eternity. But certainly, the position on VAT is very clear, and it's published on the on various UK websites by the HMRC, and the links you've got there if you'd like to check. And we're not paying VAT in Belgium either. Okay, thank you, Minty. So in terms of remit, I don't know if you're aware, but the UK is adopting a UK version of remit, and parties that are currently registered and want to trade in the EU, if they're only registered with Ofgem, they'll also have to register with an EU regulator. So if you're a UK trader out there and you want to trade, you need to sign up with a European NRA. All UK activities will need to be reported on the Elexon Remit portal. So that should be a portal that perhaps you're already familiar with. And in Belgium, obviously, Remit will continue to apply in the EU and in Belgium, and all activities need to be reported through the ENSOE transparency platform. And I think it's worth noting that from the 1st of January 21, there is no longer any equivalence. So reporting in the UK will no longer meet the EU requirements and vice versa. So you will have to report trades on both of those portals. Thank you, Minty. Now, the inter-TSO compensation scheme. So this is a scheme where where TSOs across Europe allocate money to take into account the impact of losses as a result of cross-border flows. And at the moment, GB sort of pays around sort of 9 million to 14 million pounds a year into the scheme. And if you're a third country, then in theory you'd pay a perimeter fee, which at the moment stands at about 0.7 euros per megawatt hour. However, we're not aware of any change to the ITC arrangements, and the GB will remain part of the ITC, and we're not expecting any change there. But if you would like to know more background about the ITC scheme, then there is a link there to the precise EU regulation, and also the link to the NSOE platform that tells you more about the perimeter fee. But as I say, we're not expecting any change to this. NGSO and GB is part of the ITC scheme already, and that's not expected to change. Thank you, Munti. And finally, then, just a quick note on transmission charges. The UK is going to adopt EU regulations that prevent application of transmission charges to interconnectors. So any change that would require legislation. There has been some work going on within the UK under the banner of something called Charging Futures, and that's being led by the National Grid ESO. And in that work, there is a group there that's recommended that the balancing services use of systems charges, which is about £2 a megawatt hour, and currently that's currently paid by both generation and demand. In future, should be paid only by demand. But the implementation of those recommendations, should they be accepted by the regulator, is unlikely to happen before 2023. So we're not expecting that to be any immediate impact, even if the regulator approves those proposals. So those are the sorts of high-level impacts coming out of Brexit that we can forecast and we can see and anticipate. So hopefully those are all clear. And factors that you can take into account in any trading that you're doing on Nemo Link. So the next section, then, I'm welcoming Munti Nguyen, who is working customer relations, and she's going to tell us about the detail surrounding the cutover from the IEM to the non-IEM, and the timelines in our processes, because obviously they change. We have new processes, and she's going to take us through that in detail. So, Munti, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks. So, everyone, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Munti. I'm the customer relations of Nemo Link, and I've been with Nemo Link for 2.5 years already. I remember when I first started the Nemo Link, my first week at Nemo Link, we had a Brexit forum, which happened in London. At that time, we were preparing our customers for the scenario where if there was a no deal Brexit and when we would be out of the IEM. At that time, I didn't think that 2.5 years on, we are still talking about Brexit now. But this time it is more certain, as Nick mentioned, that this is going to happen. Just to give you a background on the post-Brexit trading frameworks and the changes that will take place from the 1st of January 2021. As you all probably know, we have 3 timescales in our auctions. We have long-term, day-ahead, and intraday, where long-term and intraday are explicit auctions, and day-ahead are done via the implicit auctions, where you can buy your energy and capacity in one single transition. So what is going to change from the 1st of January? As Nick highlighted, when GB leaves the IEM, we will no longer be able to take part in the day-ahead market coupling. And therefore, Nemo Link, together with the other channel interconnectors, are going to hold our day-ahead auctions via the explicit auctions. So the first change is on the day-ahead, which will be from implicit to explicit. The second change that will happen from the 1st of Jan is on the use it or sell it. As you see, in the IEM framework, customers who do not wish to nominate their long-term transmission rights will receive the use it or sell it compensation equal the loss adjusted market spread. Now, when we are in the non-IM trading framework, where we hold the day-ahead explicit auctions, the use it or sell it compensation will now be the explicit day-ahead auction clearing price. So those are the main changes on the trading framework post-Brexit transitions. Any questions so far?
No, Minty, I think there are no questions raised.
Okay, thanks. The last to mention on the framework is there will be no changes to the intraday auctions. So use it or sell it apply, and all of our intraday auctions and nominations timing are still the same as they are today. So these are the changes as well as the processes on the trading framework. Now, in order to prepare customers of what to expect coming the end of this year, we've got a non-IM registration checklist. The majority of our customers have signed these necessary arrangements to participate in our non-IM auctions. But for some of you who haven't, we just want to remind you of what you need to have in place if you would like to trade with us after the 1st of January 2021. As Nick mentioned, all of our long-term auctions are happening on JAL. So it's we held our auctions via the ECAT platform hosted by the Joint Allocation Office, and therefore all of the contractual for our auctions will have to be signed with JAL. In order to take part in the long-term auctions in the non-IM, customers will have to have a signed JAL participation agreement as well as the participation agreement amendments to accept the GB and BE non-IM long-term rules. So even if you would like to use the long-term transmission rights via the use it or sell it mechanism, you still have to sign these rules. The only change is on the compensation itself, as I mentioned earlier. For day-ahead and intraday auctions, further than signing the agreement and the amendments to accept the GB and BE non-IM rules for each time scale, you would have to become a Nemo Link participant as well. That means you would have to sign the Nemo Link participation agreement with us, and for that it will give you also the ability to nominate on the regional nomination platform RMP. So at the bottom there, you can see the requirements to become the Nemo Link participant. That means you need to sign the PA with Nemo Link and also have the third-party registrations in place with NGSO, Elexon, BMUs, and with ELIA. For further information on registration, if you are not yet a Nemo Link participant and you'd like to register with us, please get in touch with myself or Nick, and we can go through this in more detail with you later on. Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll move to the transition timeline between now and when Brexit transition ends. So as you can see on the screen, Brexit transition ends on the 1st of Jan, and that will be the first delivery day under the non-IM rules. Working backwards, the day before the transition ends, that will be the cut-over date, which is the 31st of December 2021. And that will also be the first day we will hold our explicit day-ahead auctions on JAL. The day before the cutover date, the 30th of December, it will be the final implicit day-ahead auctions taking part in the single day-ahead market coupling. So before the cutover date, we would like to give participants opportunity to test their systems as well as our auctions and nomination platform. So we have organized a testing period between the 16th of November and the 27th of November, where customers could participate in the JAL day-ahead auctions for Nemo Link, BritNet, IFA 1 and IFA 2. And then at the same time, you can also test your explicit day-ahead nominations on RMP. So if you have bought capacity on the JAL ECAT platform, you will be able to see your transmission rights on the RMP train environment, and you can also do a test on nominations there. All the details have been sent to market participants, and we will provide further details closer to the testing period as well. Yep. Okay, now we would like to give you a bit more detail on the cutover as well as the access rules that it will apply before and after the cutover date. So when we talk about access rules, we would like to emphasize that the access rules will apply on the delivery day, even though some processes for that particular delivery day can happen beforehand, but if it's on the delivery day, the access rules will be applied for that day particularly. So for example, the 1st of Jan, it would be the first delivery day under the non-IEM access rules, and the 31st of December, which is the cutover date, it will be the final delivery day under the IEM access rules. So now the process for the 31st of December delivery day will actually happen from the 29th, or start from the 29th of December, where the last long-term nomination gates will open at 16:30 CET. So for this, as you can see on the screen, the use it or sell it will be still the same as in the IAM access rules, which is the implicit or the losses adjusted market spread. Then on the 30th of December, the long-term nomination gates will close at 9:30 CET, and following that, the final day-ahead implicit auction for the 31st of December 2020 will close at 1200 CET, and the results will be around 1242 CET. So also happening on the 30th of December, we will see processes for the delivery of the 1st of January, which is for the delivery under the non-IAM access rules. So long-term nomination gate for the 1st of January will open from 16:30 CET. But for this one, instead of the compensation as the loss adjusted market spread, if no nominations for the 1st of Jan are entered in RMP, you will receive the explicit use it or sell it, which is the auction day-ahead explicit auction clearing price. On the 31st of December, the long-term nomination gate for the 1st of January 2021 delivery will close at 900 CET. As you can see, this is the first time one of the process will change, because before the 31st of December, all of our long-term nomination gates close at 9:30 CET, but on the 31st of December, our long-term nomination gates will actually close at 9 o'clock CET. After the long-term nomination gate finished, the other change that will happen on the 31st of December is on the day-ahead auction. So before, where you can buy your energy and capacity in the same single transaction via the market coupling, this time you would have to buy capacity and your energy separately. So the first explicit day-ahead auction on Nemo Link for the 1st of January 2021 will open at 9:40 CET and close at 10:10 CET. And subsequently, the day-ahead power auctions will take place in GB and Belgium. In GB, there will be 2 power exchanges selling day-ahead energy, and the auctions for EPEX will close at 9:20 GMT with final results at 9:30 GMT. Nord Pool will have their auctions closed at 9:50 GMT, and the results you will receive at 10 GMT. And on the other side of the cable, in Belgium, you can buy your energy via the single day-ahead coupling. And as usual, the auction closed at 12 CET. The results followed at 12:45 CET, and the final result publication at 12:55 CET. So after you have bought your capacity and energy in each market, you have the opportunity to nominate your day-ahead capacity for the 1st of January 2021, and the gates will open from 12:05 and close at 1400 CET. Okay, any questions so far?
No questions that I can see, Monty.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Right then, so this one, we would just like to put all the timings in the in a more visual way, so you can see clearly the changes that will take place between the IM and the non-IM timings, long-term and day-ahead timings. So here's mentioned in the IEM, long-term nomination window will be between 1630 D-2 to 930 D-1, and you've got your implicit auction via ASDAQ from 12 to 12:55. In the non-IM non-IM world, we will shorten the long-term nomination gate window a bit, and the gates will actually close at 900 D-1. Following that, we've got the day-ahead explicit auctions on JOW between 9:40 and 10:10. Then you will receive your auction results at 10:15. After that, the EPEX Spot day-ahead auction gate closure will be at 10:20, which is a bit tight, but it will be after our auctions finished. And then you've got another opportunity if you want to buy your energy on Nord Pool's power exchange auctions. The gates will close at 10:50. Following that, we've got 12:05 to 1400 as a nomination gates. Okay. Now, when going through the changes between the non-IM and IM, it's we would like to bring you the highlights of the changes for the firmness rules as well. So in our access rules, we would like to align our non-IM rules as much as possible with the IM rules, which was following the harmonized allocation rules, and that therefore it's stated that before the day-ahead firmness deadline, transmission rights may be curtailed for force majeure or operational security reasons. And after the day-ahead firmness deadline, transmission rights may be curtailed for emergency situations. So what will be the change then? So the rules won't be applicable exactly for the same reason, but the difference will be on the compensation itself. if a curtailment happened before the day-ahead firmness deadline, long-term capacity and nominations will be compensated at the initial price paid if no day-ahead auctions were held. And if the day-ahead auctions were held, then the compensation would be based on the day-ahead auction clearing price. Obviously, long-term capacity would be curtailed after day-ahead firmness deadline because it become the long-term nominations because the gates close before the day-ahead firmness deadline. So if long-term nominations were curtailed after the day-ahead firmness deadline at 11 CET, then the compensation would still would be the same as before the day-ahead firmness deadline. And for the day-ahead capacity and nominations, the change is that you would receive the initial price paid in your day-ahead auctions. So transmission rights may be curtailed before and after day-ahead firmness deadline as well. So while our access rules outlines the provisions that the Nemo link may curtail capacities or nominations to customers, we actually would like to give customers more certainty on the firmness and on kind of the capacity that you have nominated on Nemo link. So even though we may be able to curtail your capacity also after the day-ahead firmness deadline, it has been our policy from the beginning of our operation that we will not curtail any long-term nominations after the day-ahead firmness deadline. As you may notice, since the beginning of our operations, we have never had any nominations curtailment whatsoever. So what is changing in our non-IM policy? In order to give customers even more certainty and give customers opportunity to unwind your positions, if you have nominated in long term, we have brought forward our policy not to curtail from the day-ahead firmness deadline to the beginning of our day-ahead auction. So that would be at 9:40 CET. So any trip on the Nemo link interconnector that happens after 9:40 CET, there won't be any curtailment for your nominated long-term capacity. And if it was a trip that happened before the day-ahead firmness deadline on the IEM policy, then the long-term curtailment compensation will be the lost adjusted day-ahead market spread, whereas in our non-IM policy, if there was a curtailment before 9:40 CET, the compensation would be the initial price paid for long-term capacity. So it's probably worth highlighting that it's quite rare that these happen because, for example, when Martin highlighted earlier, our year-to-date availability is 99%, and when we have a trip, it's likely that if it's a short trip, we would curtail the day after, because if we know that we may be able to come back the day after, we won't enact any curtailment for the day after, and that means that your long-term transmission rights as nominations will be kept firm. And also just wanted to stress out here that this firmness policy is only applied for in the event of a trip on a Nemo link interconnector, because this is our policy. But for any curtailments that initiated by the onshore TSOs, then the access rules will apply. And even if, like when I say that it's quite rare for Nemo Link to enact curtailment if there is a trip on our interconnector, is even more rare for the TSOs to enact the curtailments unless there is something very serious happen on the network. So just to give you a reference, since Nemo Link operated in January 2019, we haven't had any curtailments on nominations that got initiated by the onshore TSO. So even though we understand that firmness is a very a key factor for your managing risk perspective. So we also wanted to assure you that we are doing our best to make sure that if anything happens, you wouldn't be in a in a kind of position where you would be exposed very badly. And so as you can see on the diagram, we have also improved our rules and our policy, in the non-IM world, where we can try do our best to protect your positions. So that's that's the firmness policy on the long-term auctions and nominations. What will happen for your day-ahead capacity and nominations then? So in the IM world, of course, there will be no curtailment for day-ahead because it's implicit. So implicit has always been firm. So there will be no curtailment from 11 o'clock onwards. However, for our non-IM policy, we also bringing forward that 9:40 times 9:40 cut-off time. So anything that happens after 9:40, it's our policy not to curtail, and that means that before you actually bid in our day-ahead auctions, capacity is firm ready. We have listened to our customers' feedback on this, and we took on board your concerns, and we have decided, yes, if we were provide the firmness only from 11 o'clock, which is the day-ahead firmness deadline, customers still may get exposed because if they have bought capacity, if they have bought energy in the e-Export or Nord Pool's auctions, they couldn't change the position then. So therefore, we have brought forward our firmness time scale to 9:40, and that means that you would have the guarantee that if you have bought capacity on our auctions, as well as if you have secured your energy in the e-Export or Nord Pool spot auctions, your energy will be kept firm, and then you will have the opportunity to nominate from 12:05 to 1400. And of course, since your capacity is firm, your nominations will be firm. So we also want to highlight the fact that this is different to the other channel interconnectors, whereas they offer firmness on nominations only, and Nemo Link have the unique selling point here actually, that we actually offering firmness for day ahead in both capacity and nominations. So we hope that this is better suited for you, and this gives you more certainty and guarantee on trading day ahead on Nemo Link. Yes, any questions?
Minty, very good.
Yes.
Yes, we have one question from Jerome Michel from EDF. Jerome, would you like to unmute yourself and give us your question?
Yep.
Hi, Jerome.
Everybody. Hi, thank you, Modi, for that. Quick question. So the policy not to curtailed, so either long term or day ahead. Should I understand it as the equivalent of Nemo Link taking the imbalances from the start of the day-ahead auction? Is that the equivalent?
That's right. Yes, you are correct. Yeah. So the policy not to curtail, that means if there is a trip on the Nemo Link interconnector, your position are kept firm. There won't be any curtailment that's enacted on RMP, and the imbalance will be on Nemo Link. We will deal with the imbalance ourselves. Yeah.
For both long term and day ahead.
For both long term and day ahead as of 9:40 CET.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anything before 9:40.
Unless this 9:40 change to 9, like you suggested in the consultation.
Yes. Yeah. So my colleague Mona will go through.
Yes. So this 9:40 might be moved ahead at 9 o'clock.
Yes. So yes. The 9:40. The move to 9 o'clock is actually in line with the new proposal of the auction, and because Mona will go through this into more details later on in his slide, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But yes, you're right. Yeah.
That's right. So Jerome, we're just presenting here. Sorry, Jerome, I was just going to say, just for clarity, we're presenting here the day one of what will actually happen following us leaving the non-IM. The bit about 9 o'clock, that's for us improving our access rules beyond day one of leaving the IAM. So just to be absolutely clear. But Jerome, you've got another question.
Yeah, no, it's just I understand that it's still under discussion, but in case this will be moved at 9 o'clock, the policy not to curtail would be moved ahead as well at 9 o'clock and not staying at 9:40, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
cool.
That's right.
Very clear. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. That was our first question. Are there any other questions on this issue? Monty's obviously given us a very detailed exposition there of what's going to be happening. Hopefully, given that there aren't any further questions, it's exceptionally clear what's going to be happening. And of course, if on reflection there are some further issues of clarification you'd like us to resolve, then please do get in touch. You do have our contact details, and you can get in touch with us anytime. Monty, thank you for that. So onwards. Is there one more bit,
yes.
Monty? Okay. Sorry, far away.
Yes. So yes, just the last slide on the firmness policy on intraday, because we haven't touched on intraday earlier. But same as all the other processes on intraday, there won't be any changes between the IM and the non-IM world. Therefore, what we have offered for intraday firmness in the IM world will still apply. And I just want to summarize here the firmness policy for intraday for Nemo Link on intraday is that anything before the final nomination gates closure, i.e. the non-nominated capacity or any drafted nominations, can't be curtailed, and the compensation will be the initial price paid. However, anything after the final nomination gates closure, that means if you already nominated and you have no further chance to readjust your positions, then that nominations will be kept physically firm. So we would take on the imbalance, and yes, there will be no imbalance reliability on market participants. So conscious of time, we don't want to go through the detailed slides on intraday process and curtailment process here, but we included a link to our intraday slides that we presented at the intraday launch event in Brussels last year, and in there you can find further information on intraday as well as the detailed examples of what happens if there was a curtailment on intraday nominations. I also wanted to stress out that since we went live with intraday in November 2019. Nearly a year now, we haven't had any intraday nominations curtailment whatsoever either. So we're pretty confident, and fingers crossed that we would never have to use these functionality at all. But if there was, then the rules are the policy are on the slide as mentioned. So yes, if you have any further questions, please get in touch. And we also have the Q&A sections at the end, where you can also ask us any questions on Slido if you have missed the opportunity to ask a question now, but we can go through them later as well. But yes, thank you, Nick.
Munti, thank you very much. No further questions, so we're ready to go on. So I'd like to invite Mona back now. So everything Munti's told us is all about day one, and now Mona is going to tell us a little bit more about possible future changes, because we've had more information come to light recently, and obviously that has a bearing on our future arrangements. So Mona, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Nick. So yeah, I mean, just to put this into context, again, to re-emphasize, we have our day one access rules. They're ready, they're approved, and so you've learned everything about that from Nick and Munti. So here, this is about kind of how do we optimize those rules to make sure that they're the most efficient as possible, and essentially kind of have the highest degree of efficiency for the market. To be really clear, these proposals, well, we're consulting on them. They need to go through regulatory approval. They're not likely to be live as from day one. There's no clear implementation date yet, so we'll keep communicating with you on this. But this is sort of, what comes next after we have day one and go live of explicit. So it's clear and not a secret to most of you, I think, that explicit auctions compared to implicit coupling is less efficient. And therefore, as we exit the market coupling, there will be a bit of a loss of efficiency. So we at NemoLink are committed to making sure that we optimize, given the constraints, the explicit world as much as possible. And so as part of that, we have commissioned a study over the last couple of months, and as part of that, again, have had really good and detailed conversations with many of our customers. And so what we have here, what we propose here, is really kind of a reflection of those discussions and the study that we've run. So you see here on the slide, so we are consulting on these changes now. I'll go through kind of the details in a bit. Really important to note is that the consultation closes this Friday. So you have a couple of more days to submit your responses. We're really happy to get your detailed feedback, your letters, your short emails, quick feedback. Don't hesitate to really get in touch with Nick and Munti and sort of provide your feedback on this. It doesn't really matter what the format is. We just want to receive as much as we can from the markets. And so the link is there with all the details in there as well. So having said all of that, let's dive into what actually those proposed changes are to our non-IAM processes. What you have there on top of the slide is the current approved non-IAM access rules. So what will go live with on day one. On the bottom, we have essentially kind of what we're proposing to change to the rules. And so maybe to take the main changes in turn. So first of all, what you'll see there is that we're planning or proposing to bring forward our explicit auction. So currently it's scheduled to run from 9:40 to 10:10. We propose to schedule it from 9 to 9:20, but results at 9:25 CET. So why are we doing this? In the discussions that we had and the study that we've run, there's sort of essentially the concept of the OTC liquidity window. We understand that most of the OTC trading concentrates sometime between 9 and 10. And so we would like to make sure that our customers, while they buy the capacity, then afterwards they can lock out or sort of trade out their energy position in the UK using the OTC markets. So that's sort of a first benefit that we see. Secondly, what you'll see now as well is that, given that Apex spots and Nord Pool moved their day-ahead markets, they brought them forward as well. An auction close at 9:20 gives customers a little bit more time, considerably more time, to prepare their bids for the GB day-ahead markets, which we hope is a benefit as well. And then thirdly, as you can see, so the auctions for BritNet and IFA, so BritNet an auction close at 9:10 and IFA at 10. We also think that moving our auction forward a little bit means that we're a little bit more sort of clustered together with the other interconnectors, that kind of hopefully makes it a little bit more contained as well, not having the explicit auctions being scattered across the morning too much. So that's main change number one. Actually, as what I should have mentioned there as well is that we're proposing to shorten the auction window. Currently, in our current non-IM access rules, we have 30 minutes, and what we understand really is that 20 minutes should be plenty to essentially kind of complete the capacity bits. And sort of given that everything gets squeezed a little bit with Apex and Nord Pool as well having a day-ahead markets earlier, we propose to just have 20 minutes as our auction window. Second change that really relates to that, it's a smaller one. Actually, can we just stay on the same slide for a little bit longer? Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Is the long-term nomination window. So, currently set at 9, but because we need some time to run our processes and calculate the ATC before the auction starts at 9, we propose to set the long-term nomination deadline at 8:45. So a small tweak to the long-term nomination window. Third big change is the nomination gate. So again, as you can see, now it's from 12:05 to 1400. We suggest to narrow that a bit to end at 1:30. A main reason is there that we want to build in a little bit of a buffer between when the nomination window closes and when we actually need to send on the commercial profile to the TSOs. So it builds in a little bit of a contingency in the case of any operational issues. What is clear there is, if there's delays in SDAC processes, for example, then we can always sort of extend that nomination gate a little bit. So we would have that margin and to deal with any potential kind of delays to SDAC. So that is definitely still possible and shouldn't represent too much of a risk in terms of having a shorter nomination window. Again, feedback from initial feedback from several customers has been that is workable, a 1:30 auction close, but we're very keen to get further thoughts from you on this as well. Are there any questions at this point, Nick?
No, there are no questions related to this topic. There is a question that has appeared on Slido, but it's not related to this topic, so we'll take that at the end.
Thanks. So then I guess the last change, and so Jerome, you've asked the question already. How does this affect the firmness? And so on the next slide, what we see is yes, we also plan to move the day-ahead firmness deadline to 9, essentially the start of our explicit auction. And essentially, what it means is that in the event of a Nemo link trip, we will not, and after 9, we will not curtail the day-ahead rights or the long-term nominations. So those are held physically firm. So hopefully that is clear as well. And our idea is, again, we want to make sure that we give you that firmness as from the start of the day-ahead auction. We understand as well that the OTC trades and then the day-ahead market in GB are happening sooner, so you're already locking in your positions sooner as well. So we want to give you that comfort with having an earlier day-ahead firmness deadline. So Unless there's any questions on this, if you move sort of to the next slide, I just want to summarize the main questions that we've put in the consultation and just provide a bit of context. So, our first question there is, what do you think about that time change of our day-ahead auction? So I'm definitely happy to get your feedback. What do you think about the firmness deadline? Any thoughts on that? We're happy to get. Also, the nomination window, shortening that to 1:30, is that workable? Then the fourth question there is one that is probably less relevant anymore because we came out with a consultation before before Nord Pool and Apex decided to bring forward their auction. So you can still let us know whether you agree with an earlier auction, but I guess that has been pretty much, it seems, decided by the power exchanges to have those earlier auctions, which from a Nemo Link perspective we support. And then the importance of the single GB energy reference price. Again, we won't have that because we have two auctions at different times in the day-ahead energy market. But yeah, you can always give us your thoughts on that as well, but perhaps a little bit less, but less crucial now. Although, I mean, still good for us to get sort of the understanding on whether this is sort of something that our customers would struggle with. To perhaps get some kind of live feedback from everyone here in the meeting, we want to ask a couple of these questions via Slido as well. So it's a really quick consultation of the market in that sense. So I encourage you all to get back to Slido, open up your app or open up the website, and kind of answer that first question. Which is at what time should our day-ahead auction close?
Mona, can I just interject there and just ask, could this question be only answered by customers or traders, please? I know that in our attendee list, we've got some stakeholders that aren't financially involved, and therefore I'd request that it only customers to vote, please.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, really good point. Thank you. Just to emphasize as well, so the 9:20 is what we're proposing. 10:10 is obviously what we have in our current non-IAM access rules. And then you have kind of a 9:30 option and a 9:40, but it's good to see that the 9:20 seems to be the most popular one. So that's encouraging in terms of what we propose. We'll just wait a little bit to see.
Well, perhaps while we're waiting, we have a question from Eva Burbach. Eva, would you like to raise your question now?
Yes, it's regarding the poll. Is this also considering the time you get to enter the bids? Because I think that's more for us to answer. Would 9:30 mean also 30 minutes of putting in the bids, or just still 20 minutes just later?
So go on, Mona, you answer.
There's actually a separate question on that in the next. So yeah, we'll address that. I think here now you can just assume 9:20 with a 20-minute auction time, but we'll ask you a question about what you prefer. So, but this is the auction close that we're going for. So I think from what comes in here is that 16 answers in total, so seems like there's decent support for a 9:20 auction close. I don't see a lot of additional answers coming in, so we'll just take that as is, and then kind of a bit of a minority for our current, small minority for our current non-IAM schedule. Okay, interesting. Suggest we move on to the next question, which so here it is, Eva. How long should the bidding window last? 20 minutes as we propose, 30 minutes as it is, or you don't matter too much?
That's interesting, isn't it, Mona? It looks like 30 minutes there is reasonably important to market participants.
Yeah, it really seems like it is. So on this one, we're very keen to get sort of more input as well from market parties. So if you think that 30 minutes is crucial, we'd like to understand, we'd like to get your feedback as well on the consultation. Drop us a line, let us know kind of what the constraints are. Obviously, if we have a longer auction window, then something needs to shift. Either kind of the auction close or the opening. So it would be good to understand sort of what the constraints are if you prefer 30 minutes as an auction window. But that's indeed very interesting feedback to get. So thank you for that. I suggest we about 16 answers in. I don't see any others coming in, so I suggest we move on to the next question then. So this is on the nomination gate. Just a bit of context. So from an operational perspective, for Nemo Link, it's fairly easy to open up the nomination gate earlier and allow customers to already nominate relatively early. So now, obviously, we suggest 12:05. But that could be way earlier, 9:30, all to be investigated. But operationally, that seems possible. So there's a couple of different options there. So I can see a lot of no strong opinions. So seems to stay that way. But then 11 CT. Okay, the map is shifting quite a bit. Seems to be quite divided here. I think what I take away from that is that at least some customers see a value in being able to nominate early. So in that sense, there's no harm that I would see in nominating a bit earlier. So that's definitely something we can take on board.
I think we need a recount there, Mona, don't we?
Sorry?
Recount. We should have a recount on that one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think, again, if you prefer sort of like a really early nomination gate opening, then keen to get your thoughts. What is driving that? How does that benefit you? It really helps us in terms of when we decide to make these changes to as well towards the regulator for us to kind of really show that this is based on market feedback. So keen to get sort of more details on that. I suggest we switch to the last question. So when should the nomination gate close? So 2 p.m. being the current non-AM access rules and then 1:30 being the proposed. And then it's also okay if you don't want to have a strong opinion, but it seems to be 2 p.m. As a preferred for the market parties. Actually, no one is choosing the 1:30. Yeah, okay.
That's interesting as well.
Yeah, exactly. Again, keen to get sort of the feedback. What is driving this? Drop us a line, Nick and Munti, drop them a line, and so that we can compile the feedback. Yeah. Okay. Nick, I think after this, it's
okay.
over to you.
Mona,
yep.
Thank you kindly. And just to reiterate again, please do respond to the consultation. It's really important for us to understand your positions and also then to present the case to regulators. It helps us to have backing from market participants on our plans, or indeed if there's something that we can do better, then we're very keen to understand that. So please do send in your responses. An email will do, anything. So don't feel like you have to send in corporate letter-headed paper and all the rest of it. An email's fine. Okay, so the closing date on the consultation, Mona, is Thursday for Friday, isn't it? So so still a bit of time to let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
Yep.
Friday. Okay. Thank you, Mona. So, so just rounding off then, in terms of what's next. Thank you, Munti. You can see here that we have an auction calendar for next year presented here, and one notable change of our annual auction in in 2022. We have held a customer survey recently where we received some feedback from market participants that they'd prefer to have the 4th annual auction in November rather than December. So we're going to make that change to our auction calendar. And thank you to all those that responded to that survey. It's really good to get feedback. Most of it was overwhelmingly positive, actually. But thank you kindly for feeding back to that. Thank you, Monty. And then there are probably 3 other things that we're going to be looking at over the next year or so. Other feedback we received from the customer survey was a recurring theme around the availability of JAO in terms of a 24/7 help desk. So we've heard that now for some time. So we'll be talking to JAO and also talking to the other channel interconnectors as well, as they're modifying their intraday products, and having access to JAO seems to be increasingly important. So we'll be having discussions with JAO and collaborating with the other interconnectors, channel interconnectors, to see whether there's something that we can make happen there. Also under investigation. At the moment, we have an hourly product on intraday, and there is some analysis going on to see whether we can make that a 30-minute resolution for the intraday product. And finally, there's also work ongoing to see whether after we leave the IEM, whether there's something we can do in terms of returning to implicit auctions of one form or another, whether that's tight volume coupling or loose volume coupling or something else. So I imagine there'll be a project that'll be undertaken over the next months. But I would anticipate that there won't be any movement in that space for at least 18 months in terms of anything that parties agree. So that's probably more of a long-term project than anything we can expect imminently following our departure from the internal energy market. Okay, so are there any questions? Let's have a look at the Slido. There was one question that I'd seen in the Q&A section. So, will users of the interconnector have to pay BSUOS charges? So that question is anonymous, but I can refer whoever asked that to slide 18, where we specifically pick up this point in a slide called transmission charges. And that slide says that we will, the UK will be adopting EU regulations that prevent the application of transmission charges to interconnectors. So the answer to the question is no. However, there has been work going on by NGSO in the charging futures space, and a committee there has recommended that BSUOS is paid for by demand only. And implementation of that, if approved by regulators, would be in 2023. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, well, we are 8 minutes ahead of time. So, any further questions? This is a good time to ask anything at all that may be on your mind, anything you're worrying about, anything speculative, any feedback you'd like to give us, any thoughts at all. Now would be a good time. And of course, you can be completely anonymous. Jerome. Jerome,
yeah,
far away.
Just quick one. So that consultation is ending on the 13th.
Yes.
So this Friday. When do you plan to announce the final decision, final timings?
So from our perspective, Jerome, we would like to get the optimized position in place as soon as we possibly can after we leave the IEM. So I imagine we'll be moving fairly quickly. I would say probably within 2 weeks, we would anticipate that we would get that consultation response to the regulators. And then they will have 3 months to consider that submission, and then there'll be a 1-month implementation time from that decision. So we're hoping that we can get something done as soon as possible, and probably highly likely within Q1 if we can.
So it means for the 1st of January.
Yeah.
For sure, this will be the current
yes.
approved non-IM rules.
That's correct.
Okay, so there is no chance the day-ahead explicit auction will move at 9 o'clock on the 1st of Jan. Is that correct?
That is our understanding.
Okay.
That's up to the regulators to decide.
Thanks, Bart. So that was our commercial chief commercial officer, just contributing there. Any other questions? Jerome, your hand is still up. Is that an old hand or is that a new hand? Okay, it's gone. Very good. All right. Any other questions from anyone? If not, then I'm delighted to return 5 minutes to your diaries. So thank you everyone for your time to participate. I hope that was useful to you. If it was and you like the format, please give us feedback. Just drop me a Minty a line, and hopefully we'll see you very soon. And I wish you a good autumn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.